I told Hercules that the only way to activate his true powers is for him to believe that he's a god, and you must be willing to die for the power to something or someone that represents more than yourself. One day you will understand, son, that my powers was always inside you. You just need a reason to unleash it and you will activate all the powers of a god inside you, and trust me, you have always had the powers of a god. They are just dormant because you still don't believe yet. And then Hercules said, but I can use my strength. And then I laughed and said, yes you can, but you have more powers than that. Trust me, you are not just a demigod like your father would have you. Believe you carry my bloodline inside you, which means you have the powers of a true god flowing through your veins. You are not just a demigod, you are a god's son. Now believe. Hercules, and my words inspired him greatly, and his body glowed bright golden yellow, and for a little while he could use all the powers of a god, and he was able to slay the Hydra with the true powers of the perfect golden century. And then Hercules said, by the gods, I did it. For a minute I believed, and I said, keep that feeling and keep that belief with you always, grandson. And then Hercules said, thank you grandpa. And I said, remember grandson, I'm always watching you, and always remember the powers of a god is always inside you. And then I disappeared in the distance as I teleported me and Xena back to our house in Rome, and I smiled warmly as I watched all my children playing in the streets of Rome. Me and Xena, along with Gabrielle and Joxer, we all went on adventures together, but we always returned to our home in Rome to rest and gather supplies. But one day Xena received a letter from Lao Ma a lot earlier than she did in the original storyline, and Xena told me about the letter she received from Lao Ma, which I thought was strange that she told me about it and not Gabrielle. And then I said, oh yes, Lao Ma, your friend from China, I guess, right Xena? May I ask why you are telling me about it? And then she said something that surprised me, and then Xena said, Lao Ma not only wants to see me but you as well, my love. She wants your hand in marriage. And then I said, interesting, did she say why? And then Xena said, I want you to accept her hand in marriage. And I asked why, and Xena told me the full story of her and Lao Ma. She told me how she met her years ago when she was still with her former lover Boreas, and Lao Ma wanted to talk to Boreas about an alliance between his people and hers, and she told me about how Lao Ma made her see the truth about Boreas and herself. And then Xena told me something surprising about the locket she carries with her. It's a gift from Lao Ma, and Xena wants me to come with her, but we must leave Gabrielle here and she must never know. And I said, you love this woman Lao Ma, don't you? And then Xena said, yes I do, more than you know, and we must save her from that foul emperor, and I want you to kill him, my love, Xena said. And then I said, it shall be done. And then we all boarded a ship, and Gabrielle didn't find out about it until it was already too late. But Gabrielle was very upset and angry and even confused, especially after I made love to her many times, and she was now carrying all my children in her womb. And then she asked herself, why would he leave me now? And then Ares appeared and he said, it looks like you need help, Gabrielle. You know Xena will always choose him over you. And Gabrielle said, why do you care? He's your grandfather. And then Ares said, yes, that he is. But my grandfather always wanted peace, and he never understood that peace is a pipe dream. My grandpa Kronos is very old and older than time, and he's very wise, and he once told me himself that the only way there could ever be peace amongst the human race is that when all the sides are beaten bad enough for the strongest side to win decisively. Only then will every side try to negotiate peace between all sides. Only when they are about to lose everything will they surrender to peace. My grandfather Kronos once told me that, and that's the truth about peace, Gabrielle. When it comes to humanity making peace anyway, when they are about to lose everything, only then will the human race surrender to the idea of peace. He said, it's sad and pathetic really. And Ares said, you know what, grandfather is right. And then Ares said, I know what you have planned, Gabrielle. You're going to betray them, aren't you? And Gabrielle said, no, I don't want to. And then Ares said, but you will probably need to. And then right after me and Xena made it to the shores Asia, we were greeted by other warriors trying to kill us, but since I was with Xena I didn't allow them to capture us until I saw that Gabrielle had been captured and Ares was standing right beside my enemies. And I said, Ares, what is the meaning of this treachery? And then Ares said, none of this was my idea, grandfather, I promise. And I scowled, and Gabrielle stepped forward and she said, no, it was my idea.